You're at dinner with friends, everyone's laughing, having a great time, and then someone suggests going to that new rooftop bar downtown. Your stomach drops, not because you don't want to go, not because you're tired, but because you just did the math in your head and another $40 tonight means you're eating ramen for the next 3 days. So you smile, check your phone, and say, "Oh man, I totally forgot I have an early morning tomorrow." And as you walk to your car alone, you feel it. That tight knot in your chest that has nothing to do with money and everything to do with it at the same time. My name is Elon Musk, and I spend way too much time thinking about how financial inequality doesn't just affect your bank account. It affects your mental health, your relationships, and your sense of self-worth in ways that most financial advisors will never talk about. If you're someone who's ever felt like you're working just as hard as everyone else but somehow still falling behind, or if you've ever felt shame about your financial situation even though you're doing everything right, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Here's the thing, when we talk about financial inequality, we always focus on the numbers, the wealth gap, the income disparity, the statistics, and look, those numbers matter. According to research from the Federal Reserve, the top 10% of American households now hold about 67% of all wealth in the United States. The bottom 50%, they hold just 2.5% of the wealth. That's not a typo. Half of all Americans collectively own 2.5% of everything. But here's what most people don't realize. Those numbers, as shocking as they are, they're just the surface. The real cost of financial inequality isn't just the money you don't have. It's the constant cognitive load of managing scarcity. It's the mental energy you burn every single day just trying to keep your head above water. There's this fascinating study from Princeton University by economists, and they found that financial stress literally reduces your cognitive capacity. We're talking about the equivalent of losing 13 IQ points. That's like going to work after pulling an all-nighter, except it's every single day. You're making decisions about your career, your relationships, your health, all while operating with significantly reduced mental capacity. Now you might be thinking, okay, but that's just stress. Everyone deals with stress. And you're right, but here's where it gets really interesting. This isn't normal stress. This is what psychologists call scarcity mindset, and it fundamentally changes how your brain works. Let me give you a concrete example. Imagine you have $2,000 in your checking account. Your rent is $1,200 due in 5 days. Your car insurance is $180 due tomorrow. You need groceries, maybe $150 for the week. Your phone bill is $85. That's $1,615 right there. You've got $385 left, and the month isn't even half over yet. Now your check engine light comes on. The mechanic says it's going to be $600 to fix. What do? If you're living paycheck to paycheck, this isn't just a financial decision. This becomes an all-consuming crisis. You're running calculations in your head while you're trying to work. Can you push the car repair to next paycheck? What if the car breaks down completely? How will you get to work? Can you borrow money from someone? Who? Your parents, your friends, and now you're dealing with the shame of having to ask for help. Maybe you put it on a credit card, but that means paying 24% interest, which means this $600 repair actually costs you $750 by the time you pay it off. For someone with financial cushion, this same scenario is an annoyance. They're not happy about it, but they're not losing sleep. They're not running through worst-case scenarios at 2 a.m. They're not feeling a sense of personal failure because their car needs a repair. This is the emotional cost of financial inequality. It's not just having less money. It's the constant state of emergency that your nervous system lives in. And here's something nobody talks about. Financial inequality destroys relationships in ways that are almost invisible until it's too late. Think about the last time you had to decline a wedding invitation because you couldn't afford the travel. Or when you said no to being in someone's wedding party because you knew the expenses would total over $1,000 between the bachelor party, the suit rental, the gift, the hotel. You gave some excuse, but the real reason was money. Or think about dating. According to a survey by SunTrust Bank, finances are the #1 cause of stress in relationships. Not communication, not intimacy, money. But here's the twist, it's not actually about the amount of money. It's about the anxiety, the shame, and the avoidance that comes with financial stress. I've seen relationships where one partner grew up with money and the other didn't, and they might as well be speaking different languages. One person thinks nothing of spending $150 on dinner. The other person is calculating how many hours they'd have to work to earn that $150 after taxes. One person sees a vacation as a necessity for mental health. The other sees it as a luxury they can't justify. And the person with less money, they start to withdraw. Not because they don't love their partner or their friends, but because every social interaction becomes a minefield of financial anxiety. Look, here's what makes this so insidious. Financial stress doesn't just affect you in the moment. It compounds over time, just like interest, except in reverse. There's data from the American Psychological Association showing that 72% of Americans report feeling stressed about money at least some of the time. But when you dig deeper, you find that chronic financial stress is linked to higher rates of depression, anxiety, cardiovascular disease, and even premature death. Let me break down the math on this because this is where it gets really dark. Let's say you're working a job that pays $45,000 a year. That's roughly $3,750 a month before taxes. After taxes, you're looking at maybe $3,000 take home, depending on your state. Now, the average rent for a one-bedroom apartment in the United States is around $1,400. That's already 47% of your take-home pay. Financial experts say you should spend no more than 30% of your income on housing. You're already at 47%. Add in a car payment, $350, insurance, $150, gas, $160, groceries, $300, utilities, $150, phone, $85, student loans, $250, and basic healthcare costs, $200, and you're at $3,045. You've already exceeded your monthly income, and we haven't even talked about saving for retirement, building an emergency fund, or God forbid, doing something enjoyable. So what happens? You start making trade-offs. Maybe you skip the doctor's appointment because you can't afford that minor health issue becomes a major health issue 2 years later, and now you're looking at thousands in medical bills. Or maybe you can't afford to fix your car properly, so you do the cheap patch job, and 6 months later the whole transmission goes, and now you're financing a car you can't afford. This is the poverty trap, and here's the psychological shift that happens. You stop seeing yourself as unlucky or in a temporary situation. You start seeing yourself as fundamentally incapable. You internalize the inequality as personal failure. And this brings me to what might be the most damaging emotional cost of all: shame. Financial shame is this pervasive, toxic feeling that you're doing something wrong, that if you were just smarter, worked harder, made better decisions, you wouldn't be in this situation. And our society reinforces this constantly. You scroll through Instagram and see people your age buying houses, going on vacations, wearing nice clothes. You watch YouTube videos where 25-year-olds talk about their investment portfolios worth $200,000. You hear politicians talk about personal responsibility and pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. And here's the thing, some of those people genuinely did work hard and make smart decisions. But most of them, they had advantages they don't even see. Maybe they graduated without student loan debt because their parents paid for college. Maybe they got their first apartment with a cosigner and a security deposit from their family. Maybe they got a car as a graduation gift. Maybe they had a family connection that got them their first job. A study from the Pew Research Center found that about 60% of wealth is inherited, not earned. Let that sink in. The majority of wealth in this country isn't created by hard work or smart investing. It's passed down. But we don't talk about that. Instead, we create this narrative that everyone starts from zero and your outcomes are purely a reflection of your choices, which means if you're struggling, it must be your fault. This shame keeps people from talking about money. It keeps them from asking for help. It keeps them from organizing collectively to demand better wages or working conditions. Because if your financial struggle is a personal failing, then it's something to hide, not something to address systemically. Now you might be thinking, okay, this is depressing, but what can I actually do about it? And look, I'm not going to pretend there's some simple solution that's going to fix wealth inequality overnight. But here's what I want you to understand. Recognizing the emotional cost of financial inequality is the first step to protecting yourself from it. Because here's what happens when you don't recognize it. You make decisions based on shame and scarcity rather than strategy and values. You stay in a job you hate because you're terrified of the financial instability of job hunting. You don't negotiate your salary because you feel like you should just be grateful to have a job. You don't invest in your education or skills because you can't see past the immediate cost. You don't start that business or pursue that creative career because the financial risk feels insurmountable. This is the opportunity cost of financial inequality. It's not just what you don't have now. It's everything you don't pursue because the emotional weight of financial stress has convinced you that security is more important than growth. There's this concept in economics called risk aversion under scarcity. Basically, when you're operating from scarcity, you become so focused on not losing what little you have that you can't take the calculated risks necessary to improve your situation. But here's the psychological shift I want you to make. Your financial situation is not a reflection of your worth as a human being. It's a reflection of a system that concentrates wealth at the top and makes it increasingly difficult for everyone else to build security. So what do you actually do? Here are 3 things that can help protect your mental health while you navigate financial inequality. First, get radically honest about money with the people you trust. Find 1 or 2 friends who you can talk to openly about finances, not to compare or compete, but to normalize the struggle. Some of my most valuable conversations have been with friends where we just laid out our actual numbers, our debts, our anxieties, our fears. It breaks the shame spiral. Second, separate your self-worth from your net worth. This sounds simple, but it requires conscious practice. Start noticing when you're tying your value as a person to your financial situation. When you catch yourself thinking, I'm such a failure because you can't afford something, reframe it. The system is structured in a way that makes this difficult. It's not about making excuses, it's about seeing reality clearly. Third, focus on what economists call control points. You can't control the wealth gap, you can't control the cost of housing or healthcare, but you can control your financial literacy. You can control your spending in certain categories. You can control whether you negotiate your next salary. You can control whether you have honest conversations about money. And here's something practical. If you're living paycheck to paycheck, your first goal isn't to save for retirement or invest in the stock market. Your first goal is to create a tiny buffer. Even $500 in a savings account changes your psychology. It means the check engine light isn't a crisis, it's a problem you can solve. That psychological shift is worth more than the investment returns you get from $500 in the market. Look, I'm not going to end this with some inspirational quote about how you can achieve anything if you just believe in yourself. That's garbage. The truth is, financial inequality is real, it's getting worse, and it's designed to benefit the people who already have wealth. But here's what I also know, understanding the emotional cost of financial inequality gives you power. It helps you see that your stress, your shame, your anxiety, these aren't personal failings. They're rational responses to a difficult situation. And when you stop internalizing financial struggle as personal failure, something interesting happens. You start making better decisions. You stop operating from a place of fear and shame. You start operating from a place of strategy and self-compassion. You negotiate harder for your salary because you understand that your employer benefits from your discomfort with talking about money. You pursue opportunities that might have more risk but more upside because you understand that playing it safe in an unequal system is its own form of risk. You have honest conversations with your partner, your friends, your family about money because you understand that the shame is the system's way of keeping you isolated. The emotional cost of financial inequality is real, but so is your ability to protect yourself from it. Not by pretending it doesn't exist, but by seeing it clearly and refusing to let it define who you are. If this video helped you see your financial situation differently, or if it just made you feel less alone in your struggle, do me a favor and share it with someone who needs to hear this. And make sure you're subscribed because we're going to keep having these honest conversations about money that nobody else wants to have. Remember, your worth isn't measured by your wallet. It's measured by how you show up in the world, how you treat people, and how you keep pushing forward even when the system is stacked against you. I'll see you in the next one.